Good morning. It's the PHN Penguins regroup after round one of Penn's Flyers this week. Goes to the boys in black, 5-2 at PPG Paints Arena for once this season in front of actual fans. How about that? There's a first time for everything, at least in 2021. I'm Matt Geica. Dan Kingerski was live on the scene. And Dan, my first question to you as we go over what happened last night and get ready for game number 2 tomorrow evening. What was it like to actually have real human beings in the seats down in front of you as you set up on the media level perched high above?
Yeah, it was special, and I think that's just the best word for it. During the national anthem, when it wasn't a recorded Jeff Jimerson, and it was live Jeff Jimerson through a mask, whatever, and the guys in the visitors' corner yelled, "Let's go, Pens!" during the anthem. It smacked me right in the feels, man. I mean, it was kind of an emotional moment for me. And I think the players had that too, where it wasn't full normalcy. You can tell I'm a little worse for wear this morning.
You're
long night and
emotionally spent.
Well, it's just boy, this schedule. I can't imagine the players. This schedule is brutal, but only 2,800. But go back to that scene in Shawshank where they're having beer on the roof, and Red says, for a moment we felt like free men, and it just there was that outpouring, I think, from both sides, from the Penguins organization, the players, coaches, and the fans. There was a special communion last night that was just palpable. And I thought that was just so great to even be witness to that as a scribe, to be able to tell that story and to be there for it.
Well, and appropriate that it was against Philly that we get the fans to get in the building, get on their feet, cheer a little bit. And I feel very fortunate to I think in a lot of ways to be able to cover this game for a living, but I know that I would have loved to have been there in person. So I hope that all the folks who were there last night appreciate it, and season ticket holders getting first dibs. You might be able to score some on the secondary market, I suppose. We'll see how things go. And
maybe not initially. After the fans go to a few games, perhaps they'll start giving them up a little bit.
Yeah, but with 12 games coming up here in March, that's very promising, and kind of a surprise announcement on Monday as well. So kudos to the Penguins for being ready to handle all that, to get the arena workers in place. And they had the touchless concessions, all the stuff that David Morehouse talked about previous to the season. And now they get a chance to test all these measures. And I just hope that we can continue on in this positive momentum. And as far as the team on the ice is concerned, a scoreless first period, Dan, it didn't necessarily look like it was the continuation of the Islanders series out there on Long Island. But of course, the Penguins and their fans were getting a little bit antsy, I'm sure, trying to get on the board here. A crucial series, and without Sidney Crosby. Not to bury the lead, but no Sid, at least for that game last night. We'll see how long the COVID protocol keeps him in its clutches. We don't know anything about that, but what we do know is that the Penguins are going to have to survive and try to thrive here in this scenario. And there was one really interesting tactical part of the game that you wrote about on Pittsburgh Hockey Now. I know it surprised me to see the Flyers be so aggressive, in some cases 3-4 checkers in the offensive zone, trying to press the issue. And at times the Penguins had some trouble, and at times the Penguins took penalties too. That didn't help the momentum in the first period. But once the Penguins figured that out and they get able to get past that first wave of Flyers, boy, did they create some scoring chances. They had some serious looks off the rush in addition to in the zone. We were talking about how Alain Vigneault was not necessarily a sit-back counterattack guy, but that's his lane. The 1-3-1, not really letting the opponent get the edge on you through the neutral zone. That was not the case last night. So what was your reaction to seeing that and how the Penguins picked their way through expertly and set up so many good looks on net?
Yeah, I mean, first, if we're going to talk about that, I think we should acknowledge Tristan Jari and how great. I mean, he was brilliant on Tuesday night. But yeah, from there sprang I was shocked. I mean, I have no other words for it. That was not the Alain Vigneault that I know. I think the Flyers made a tactical decision that without Sidney Crosby and with Evgeny Malkin playing however he's been playing this season, kind of the hot and cold, muted version of Malkin, they just went after the Penguins. But the Penguins, just textbook, slipped a forward behind the forecheckers. The defense speed, the speed on the Penguins' blue line, I thought really set it up as well, because they all make a good first pass. And they did that to center ice, usually right between the red and the blue line, to slip past that first wave of forecheckers. In the first period, Matt, it was along the wall. A lot of chips off the wall, but the forwards were right there waiting. The Flyers adjusted to that, so the Penguins began to slip it up the middle of the ice. That's what happens when you complete passes and go tape to tape. So once they got the Flyers back checking instead of forechecking, the defensemen just absolutely raced up the ice. So the Penguins had not only 3 forwards going forward, but they had a defenseman joining the rush too. You saw in Brian Rust's goal. Here came Chris Letang right behind Evgeny Malkin into the offensive zone, shot on net, even though 2 Flyers defensemen left Rust alone. Rust is in the crease, buries the rebound. And a couple of those goals, Cody Ceci and Mark Friedman joined the rush on that back-breaking goal. So those extra sticks in the offensive zone were created by the speed out of the defensive zone, but it just all created a wonderful, cohesive 5-man unit for the Penguins that I don't think I have seen from that team under Mike Sullivan ever, really.
Wow,
I mean,
that's high praise.
well, I mean, it was one game. I'm not going to, do somersaults and say this is an entirely new organization. But, I mean, think to 2016 and 17 when you and I were competing when we covered the team, which was a lot of fun. I loved competing against you and our little question battles. Who could get the best answer from our questions? That really, I think it upped both of our games. But going back to those teams specifically, they were shot first teams, especially 2016. Scramble the defense, get the shots in the offensive zone, then get the puck, which made the defense chase. There wasn't a lot of prettiness to the game. There wasn't that Russian ballet, so to speak, that we saw last night with a coordinated spinning, whirling dervish of 5 players. So I had a lot of fun watching that part too.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. I think you're spot on about how
I
when
usually
Sullivan
am.
first came to the Penguins, it wasn't about connecting passes necessarily. It was about playing indirectly, filtering pucks into corners down the walls, letting the speedy forwards go after it. Especially the second cup run, there was a lot of just chip it off the glass and go get it. And I know Mike Sullivan talks a lot about how the game has evolved. I know he's a student of the game. He's very much involved in USA hockey workshops in the off season too. Talking to people in the coaching community, they're very impressed by how he seems to be on top of trends here. So perhaps the next trend for the Penguins to try to jump onto, or the next inefficiency to try to jump onto, is to reverse that stylistic lack of flow in a lot of ways, you might want to call it, that brutal speed game that they used at first, and now try to temper that. And I love getting the defensemen involved here, both on the rush and also in the O zone. I thought they could have used a little bit more of both coming into this season. So even someone like Cody Ceci, I didn't really know how mobile he would be. I didn't get a chance to watch him game by game prior to his arrival in Pittsburgh. I just knew him from the Ottawa Senators team that pushed the Pens to the brink in 17 for the most part. And he wasn't doing a lot of joining the rush for Guy Boucher. We'll put it that way. But
well, Matt, let me interject something.
Join the rush. That tells you how committed the Penguins are to that, for sure.
Well, let me interject something there, and I think you bring up an important point of fandom. You didn't realize how mobile Cody Ceci was because there was such an overwhelming fan reaction. Everyone knew exactly how bad Cody Ceci was because someone else had told them, or the tastemakers, as you appropriately coined a few years ago, told them that Cody Ceci was a terrible defenseman. As we watched film and we looked at Ceci's performance in Ottawa, I mean, he was the steady guy, beside Erik Karlsson. You don't get to join the rush when you play with Erik Karlsson.
Nope.
And in Toronto, he was, think about this. What they made fun of Cody Ceci for in Toronto was the fact that his shot was, wide range buckshot that was Chris Letang on his worst day. But that also means he was in the offensive zone trying to create. So if you put it all together, and this year Ceci has kind of consolidated his game. He's using his, he's not elite skating, but he's mobile enough. And he learned some things in the offensive zone last year, trying to be an offensive defenseman. But he's incorporated, that into a very nice package. And just while we're on the subject, I think it's March 8th that, or maybe March 1st, that teams can approach players for a contract for next season. That's when that date is this year. If I were Ron Hextall and Brian Burke, I'd be on the phone with CC's camp right away to lock him up for several years.
Yeah, it was a show me type of contract, and he's shown the Penguins quite a bit through the opening 6 or 7 weeks of the season. How about another new guy, Kasperi Kapanen? The goal he scored to open the scoring for the Penguins, to break the floodgates. They were trailing 1-0 in this game. Let's recall. It was brief, but they were down.
Yeah.
And it could have snowballed on them in a negative direction, especially considering how things went the previous game. But Kapanen, fake slap shot, goes in, does the Spezza move, as he called it. He learned something from his veteran teammate last year on the Leafs. So fun to see that interaction after the game and talking about how he was inspired by that. But it just highlighted the raw tools that Kapanen has. That's why this guy is still considered to be an intriguing player in the NHL. And we can debate whether he was worth the first round pick, whether he was worth being picked in the first round going back several years. But at the same time, you see why. The quick feet, the quick hands, the great shot, and some nice offensive instincts. Now, as far as the team game is concerned, yeah, he's had some issues with consistency, and there's going to continue to be I think a process there, figuring out where he fits. Right now, it's kind of tough to tell, obviously, with sit out, but you see these flashes from him. That's why a guy like that gets chances, basically, and I think there can still be a way for him to fit in very well with what the Penguins are doing, but it's kind of like one of those maddening bad game, good game type of cycles here. The Penguins hope it's a longer cycle on the positive side, but he's just an exciting player to watch, isn't he? I do enjoy that, whether he stays on the top two lines or not.
Yeah, you definitely want to see more consistency from him.
A guy like that gets chances. Basically, and I think there could be a way for him to fit in very well with what the Penguins are doing, but it's kind of like one of those maddening. I hear an echo.
There we go. Sorry, I was trying to pull up the.
Oh, okay.
Because actually, what we've done is we've created a second stream here, Matt. So people who are waiting to watch are now like, "What the hell? Where's?" So you may want to. My computer is dying as well. I didn't realize it.
Okay.
So you may want to go back into the original stream and repost this stream into the original.
I see John Gorman and Schmoy Boy have migrated over, by the way. Join us on the live chat. We want to give you an opportunity too. Anyway.
Yeah, but let me address the Kapanen stuff. While you do that, I'll talk for a minute, and then you'll talk, and I'm going to plug in.
Okay.
Yeah, look, the Penguins invested heavily in Kasperi Kapanen. Let's not forget that after that trade, a few GMs said privately, well, of course, I guess if we were able to report it, it wasn't so private, but said they were shocked by Rutherford's deal because they know that other teams would have given more for the Penguins' lottery pick. I thought that was both telling of Rutherford's interest in Kapanen and a bit damning of sometimes his shoot first, ask questions later approach to building the team. The Penguins obviously invested that much in him, so they need that production from him. He can't be a third line, 13-goal guy this season that he was in Toronto. So he has to carry the water as a top six forward, and as such, because this team is so top heavy, there's a lot of water to carry, a lot of responsibility in that role. He can't have one great game, two bad games, or one great game and fade into the background. If there is a player to compare him to, not stylistically on the ice, but in terms of, almost seems like mentality, there is a bit of Phil Kessel in Kasperi Kapanen. Other people I've seen notice it as well. As post game, he just gives off this Phil Kessel vibe, the way he speaks and everything. But
very nonchalant, we'll put it that way. Yeah,
nonchalant.
Doesn't seem impressed.
Yeah, I don't want to do this. Here's a couple answers for you, but in those couple answers, there's sometimes unvarnished honesty. So yeah, there's definitely some Kessel there. Also, the consistency factor is very Phil Kessel. So I think the Penguins have to really implant in him that need to be there night in and night out. He's not a third liner in Toronto anymore behind some great players. He's now with the great players and actually has to pick them up occasionally too.
We have a comment here on the live stream from John Gorman. As I mentioned, he's joined us. Hello, John. He wants to know, how did you grade Mark Friedman's play last night? The former Flyer, the pride of Providence College, got his first Penguins appearance in the place of P.O. Joseph on the so-called third pairing there on the line chart. It's tough for me to tell watching from home because, of course, the camera shifts up ice. It's really, I find it's difficult to grade defensemen, especially when you watch on TV, just because of the limitations of the box that I'm watching it on. So you're there, you're able to see the full 200 by 85 feet. How'd you feel about Mr. Friedman wearing number 52? It took me a while to figure out who that was. In fact, a couple of shifts last night. Oh, appear to have lost Dan here. His computer is dying. He said he wasn't lying about that. He may have to plug that thing back in. Anyway, Friedman, as Dan mentioned, did join the rush there, as I'll vamp for a moment to allow him to get a chance to get back onto the Zoom call. And if you did watch Pittsburgh postgame last night, we talked a little bit about just the defense and wanting to have one guy on each pairing who's able to carry some of that offensive heavy lifting. Didn't think we'd see Friedman do too much of that, but overall, I would say, John, that I felt like he was serviceable. You don't want him to necessarily stand out, because sometimes when you're a fifth or a sixth defenseman, if you stand out, you're doing something wrong. Doesn't quite have a dynamic skill set, but certainly a serviceable D-man, and I'm just glad that they have another option there for sure to be able to plug in and give a guy like P.O. Joseph a chance to watch from up above, to use the old cliche, and perhaps figure some things out there. Chris Neese says, love the live stream, and he's a subscriber of PHN. So Chris, thank you for that. Dan, of course, thanks you as well. Chris wants to know, should Cappy play on the PK like he did in Toronto? Well, if the Penguins are going to stick to that aggressive puck pursuit approach on the penalty kill, make sure everyone is on the same page, then yeah, his speed would certainly play, you would think, for an assignment like that. And if a guy like Mark Jankowski, for instance, I know he's a center and Kapanen's a wing, but if he's going to be up in the press box watching, then you might need an extra body on the penalty kill. I'm overall in favor of playing so-called skilled guys on the PK, and you see Brandon Tanev flash some skill whenever he gets a chance to rush the puck back up ice shorthanded. So I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I also want to make sure that Kapanen's on his P's and Q's at even strength, and it appears that Dan is going to be joining us here again. We'll welcome him back into the fray. You said your computer was dying. You weren't lying about that, apparently.
Well, in the rush to try to plug it in, I literally knocked everything over, including my router and everything. You should have seen the mess, but you can see my television behind me, and I hate showing too much of my house.
Just you got to find that perfect Zoom backdrop, man. That's been the key to thriving in quarantine.
But before I destroyed my house, everything here, you asked about Mark Friedman, right?
Yeah, I was asking, being there in person, you get to see the whole ice surface. So what did you see? It's tough for me to really grade him last night in his first appearance.
I really didn't notice him, to be honest. I wasn't keying on him. So I didn't grade him for a reason. Although the fact that the Flyers got 42 shots doesn't speak well of any of the Penguins' really, especially the defensemen. But they played so well forward that the fact we didn't notice Friedman is probably a good thing. He's playing on his offhand. Don't forget, he played on the left side. He's a right-hander playing on the left side, so that's one factor. Also, he's only played 12 games this year. I think he last played wing in Lake Tahoe, not even on defense. So, we're not going to grade Mark Friedman until he becomes a regular in the lineup, or until he plays regularly at least. And then we'll worry about him.
Yeah, that was my thought too. You don't necessarily want a guy like that to stand out, especially in his first appearance. He's trying to get the X's and O's of the Penguin system down and trying to get in flow with a new partner, with new teammates, all of that. So pretty high standard to step into an important game. As we mentioned, Dan, that regulation win pulled the Penguins tied with the Flyers for fourth. And I don't want to be alarmist here, but the season is in the balance at the moment because the Penguins have played a couple more games than teams like the Flyers, and they entered the week out of a playoff spot. They're still out of a playoff spot, as a matter of fact, due to that tiebreak scenario. So here they are without Sid. That's the great unknown at the moment. And, getting closer and closer to the trade deadline. Brian Burke and Ron Hextall have seen several games at this point. So the time for action is now, both on the ice and off. And if we can direct our attention to the latter part of that equation, you wrote something on PHN Plus recently about looking for players who might be able to add some energy, to add some fortitude along the boards in the high traffic areas, but also guys who are able to play. Obviously, doesn't help to insert someone who's just going to charge up and down the wing and not touch the puck. But when you were looking around the league there, well, exactly what type of player are you looking for? Because I found that the comments from Ron Hextall the other day in his press availability were pretty interesting. First of all, he was talking about, when it comes to drafting guys, focusing on will as much as skill, and then also discussing toughness. What brand of toughness, though, do you think he's talking about? Because someone like me hears the word toughness, it's kind of like a dog whistle. You're thinking, oh, a guy who can't play, he can just play hard, but he can't necessarily play. So what are you talking about when you talk about toughness?
Well, I think this is here, two things. Well, I want to circle back for a quick moment here. We talk about how important this Flyers series was. Do the quick math in the standings for the Penguins. 3 games against the Flyers, whom they trailed by 2 points, but the Flyers had 2 games in hand. So that could be as many as 6 points behind the Flyers already. If they were to have, say, lost 2 of 3, now all of a sudden, they could be down 8-10 points. Actually, no, if you win 1, they could have been down 8 points to the Flyers with 33 games remaining. The ability to catch a team when so far behind with so few games to go would be almost impossible. The Flyers would have to really collapse or have a brutal skid for the Penguins to have caught them. The Penguins would have had to have won like 21 of 33 just to have a chance to catch Philadelphia if they lose 2 of 3 in this 3-game set. Now, getting to the toughness, I think it's an important question you ask, and I'm glad you asked that because I know you do hear that dog whistle. You and a lot of the Penguins fans hear toughness and they think Tom Sestito, or Dennis Bonvie or any of those guys who played 3 minutes a night would go out and get in a fight, and that was their job.
Krzysztof Oliwa. I'll name a Polish guy just to throw in.
The Polish hammer, Krzysztof Oliwa. Another side story. Oliwa was the first player to ever talk to me in the Penguins locker room. I was like 24 years old. I had no reporter background. I was just a music DJ making the switch and got a job with the Penguins network. And so there I am with my little mini disc recorder and a microphone with a 3WS logo on it, just getting some sound, having some of the players say, hey, this is the Penguins broadcast on 3WS. That was my only job. And Oliwa starts talking to me about the technology of the mini disc. Here's this guy with hands like, hang on, they're like that big, 10 feet away. And I'm nervous as it is. And he starts, and I had no idea what to say to him. I completely froze. I'm like, oh yeah, and like backed away, like, in Homer Simpson into the bushes of that meme. And knowing what I know now, I wish I'd just started talking to the guy, but he was really into technology anyway. What toughness means, Matt Geitka, is that ability to throw a hit. Now, Brandon Tanev throws a lot of hits, right? And there's some energy to be gained from that. But Tanev's not a big guy, and he doesn't always make a dent with those hits. And there's not a danger about Brandon Tanev. There's not a danger that he'll drop the mitts if you get out of line. There's not a danger that he will catch you at open ice and have you looking at the rafters. There's not that dangerousness that Brandon Tanev brings. And actually, the same would go for, trigger warning, Jack Johnson, who threw a lot of hits as well, but he wasn't necessarily dangerous. So the Penguins are missing a little bit of that danger factor, but also a guy who can play hockey. You need, Tom Wilson is such a huge asset for the Washington Capitals because he is so good at hockey, but he also will waylay you if you're not paying attention. And you have to pay attention to him. Maybe that's a better way to phrase it instead of dangerous, is you have to pay attention when they're on the ice. And the Penguins don't necessarily have that. Austin Watson in Ottawa, even though they just picked him up this year, Ottawa did find Nick Ryan, who's playing top 6 minutes up there. And Ryan loves to fight and score. And if there's an heir apparent to Tom Wilson, it might be, journeyman Nick Ryan, who's had to pay his dues in the American Hockey League for a few years, who's just embracing NHL life. But also because of that, because they have Eric Goodbranson up in Ottawa, we really circled Austin Watson, longtime Nashville Predator, as a guy who can play hockey. He's defensively responsible. He'll play in the offensive zone as a big body, but he's not going to wow you in any way, shape, or form. But he's had 4 fights this year because Ottawa is just a scrappy, devil may care, go for it kind of team with their attitude this year. I actually kind of enjoy Ottawa Senators games because you never know what you're going to get.
Oh, yeah.
There's
the same way. I've enjoyed watching them upset the Canadians, the comeback against Toronto. They're a fun little spoiler up there in the North.
They really are. They have nothing to lose, and they go for broke. And part of that is dropping the gloves or being physical. And I think the Penguins could use a bit of that. What do they call it? BDE from Austin Watson.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I didn't think we'd go there this morning, but since you did,
well, I didn't elongate what BDE means. So if you know what it means, I guess I'm clean. If you don't know what it means, I'm not going to explain it.
Okay. Well, we'll settle on that. I do know what you mean. It's just, it's hard to find guys who can do all those things. That's the problem, right? And then I get worried about giving up assets for someone like that who may not be able to do all those things. So
right. Well, that's why we had essentially 2 of them on our list.
Mm-hmm.
Austin Watson, and I hate to give away a PHN Plus article.
I didn't want to give away the players, but you're going to go ahead and do it.
yeah. I figure if you're watching the video, I'll go ahead and spoil myself, and hopefully you'll grab the PHN subscription. Was Nicolas Delorier in Anaheim, the former Montreal Canadiens defenseman turned winger. Dude has a hard shot, and when he hits, the boards move, and he rather relishes in that physical role. So he's got good enough skates. He's got affordable contract. I think it was only about $1 million, maybe a 1.5 million without looking, here in front of me. And he has in the past fed Tom Wilson his lunch. So you look for a guy who can do that. I thought Eric Goodbranson kept Tom Wilson in check very much. Look at those Capitals games when Goodbranson was a Penguin. Wilson's behavior was markedly different. The number of hits he dished and the quality of the hits he dished were quite diminished. So, a player like that not only makes your team taller, it makes the other team just a little smaller.
A couple of questions about P.O. Joseph. I addressed this when you had your little Zoom outage there for a moment, but I want to give you a chance as well to weigh in on it. Walt Flanagan and John Gorman both asking about Joseph.
Hey, Walt Flanagan, how are you?
Yeah, he's been great for the post games and for these morning shows so far too. So Walt, one of our most loyal viewers and watchers here on the network. But he talked about P.O. Joseph. So did John Gorman, wanting to know Is he the candidate to sit some games out? We discussed this a little bit in our first show this week, but after last night, it does appear that that's much more of a possibility that he is on the taxi squad for a while. Do you think he's even a candidate to go down to the AHL and play? Because you wonder, a young guy like that, do you necessarily want him stagnating, just practicing with a handful of guys and the skills coach, Ty Hennis, or do you want him to be actually in a team environment? But of course, the AHL is different this year. It doesn't have the same quality with so many players on these taxi squads. So I think it's a difficult balance. What do you think about that?
Right now, I don't think it's a difficult balance. I think he needed a timeout. I think he needed to reset, maybe watch a few games. A player of that, at that point in his career, can benefit from watching a little bit. Certainly Mike Matheson did as well this year, when he got to kind of watch the games and absorb the systems. So I don't think you send PO down to the AHL unless you don't think you're going to play him anytime soon. If that's the case, then yeah, you let him marinate for a week and then send him down and say, okay, we want you to work on X, Y, and Z. And he will, because he's that kind of quality person. He's not going to sulk. He's not going to throw a temper tantrum. He's going to go down and genuinely work on X, Y, and Z. I tend to think you don't want Mark Friedman playing on his offhand a lot. We saw enough good things from P.O. Joseph that he gets a second chance in the lineup before you send him down, to get some playing time. So I don't think the Penguins are there to that point that they would demote him to the AHL. The taxi squad fits perfectly, but that's where I would be with him.
How about Tristan Jari? I don't want to gloss over it, but you could make a strong argument that was his best performance in a while, one of his best performances in a Penguin sweater. Yeah, he had the puck handling gaffe late in the third period, made things interesting. It couldn't be a Penguins game this year if we didn't have some drama in the final 10. But overall, kept the Pens in it early on. Those two early PKs, the Flyers got some glorious looks, and he made the saves. And the only goal outside of the gaffe that I mentioned, the only goal that was scored against him was a backdoor slam dunk where the Penguins couldn't defend a rush very well. So Jari, right at the top of the heroes from last night with Kapanen and Malkin, he played better too. But Jari, do you feel that there is enough of a sample size now? Maybe since that COVID break, he just looks like a different goalie. Are the Penguins justified in saying, okay, we can not necessarily have to go pursue something in terms of a trade, or we don't have to worry about continuing to stir the pot there with Casey DeSmith. We can allow Tristan Jari to be the number one. Are you at that point right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I talked about this, maybe it was with Paul Zeiss. I did actually 3 radio hits the other day. It was kind of the first time I've done that many in a single day, a couple podcasts mixed in there too. I guess I've become popular all of a sudden, but
you're the soothsayer, Pittsburgh hockey media.
Well, I feel like I have added more context, maybe some insights that our others don't have the space for at Pittsburgh hockey now. Tristan Jari had to fight his way back to the NHL. I mean, don't forget he had that 26, 29 game stretch a few years ago, right? When Matt Murray was injured and he had to play. So he got his call up very young, and the Penguins more or less picked him apart in the exit interview. They said, okay, you don't work hard enough in practice. These are your flaws. Go work on it. And Jari, being a young guy, said, yeah, I'm a good goalie. Okay. Went down to the AHL and they left him there. And I think he began to wonder what's going on. Why aren't I in the NHL? And this is purely me reading from the outside of the situation. This is not me, having a private conversation with Jari, but this is me talking to people around the situation and such. Eventually, I think last offseason, which seems like a lifetime ago, it clicked that if he wanted to be in the NHL, he had to absolutely earn it. Mike Sullivan wasn't going to give it to him. And in fact, Mike Sullivan probably did prefer Casey DeSmith for the 2019-2020 season. Had it not been for that extra few $100,000, I guess about $500,000 difference between DeSmith and Jari, DeSmith would have been the backup last year. We never would have had that great Tristan Jari run. So sometimes serendipity does work in people's favor, but Jari had to prove to the Penguins organization, at least part of it, that his practice habits were better, that he was more mature, that he would take it more seriously, and he's done that. He also had to work on his game. So all of those things, he had to smooth the rough edges more so than, let's say, more favored players. He had to prove himself in a greater way. And in doing so, the hotter the fire, the tougher the steel. So I think Jari is more ready for this opportunity than, say, Matt Murray was when he was handed the reins as the number one.
Yeah, he's been through quite a bit, bouncing up and down, like you mentioned. That can either toughen you or it can boot you right out of the business. So credit to Tristan Jari. He seems to be in that former category. I have one more thing that I wanted to bring up, and John Gorman addresses the power play. So, of course, the power play goal last night from Kasperi Kapanen, it was a thing of beauty. The Penguins got inside the Flyers' box with some quick passing and then got it to Gensel on the doorstep. I was actually a little nervous that the Penguins scored on a play like that because Gensel had a half-open net. I wish he would have just shoveled the thing into there, but instead he tries another one-touch pass across. Hey, it works out. Kapanen was ready for it. Some guys maybe wouldn't have been, but they do get the conversion. There were some sparks there. I'm just a little concerned that they're going to start to like their own brand, if you will, and start to sort of try to recreate that one over and over again. There were some good fundamentals there, but maybe I'm just being silly here and projecting my own thoughts onto reality. But I love to watch the pretty tic-tac-toe goals, but at the same time, that one was almost too cute by half, wasn't it?
I didn't see it that way. I saw that as a play that the Pittsburgh Penguins try to make quite often.
But should they? That's the question.
When it works, absolutely do that more. But no, I think you make an interesting point there, Matt, that I hadn't considered. Will they start to believe their own brand after one game, or try those beautiful chalkboard textbook tic-tac-toe rushes and plays like they converted last night? I think the thing without Sidney Crosby in the lineup last night is there was so much chaos going on that you bring a different energy to the rink. You're excited for the fans, but you have this huge challenge ahead of you. And I thought it made the Penguins a bit quicker last night. And I thought it made them more intense, made them tougher, made them more physical. That was adrenaline. That was adrenaline from several sources pouring into one situation. Now, can they sustain that? Can they sustain that? The same thing we saw last year without Sidney Crosby, when a few members of the team just put them on their back and said, let's go, boys, we got this. I tend to think you're going to see that for as long as Crosby is out, whether it's another couple of days, just a contact tracing thing. Once he's cleared, he's back in a few days. Or knock on wood, hopefully he was not diagnosed as positive. But if he were, he's out for a couple of weeks. I think you will see that the Penguins kind of get in that foxhole together and band together. Hopefully it does teach them something. The lessons that they learned last year about playing hard and playing physical and playing intense and playing simple in the absence of Sidney Crosby, that they seem to forget in March and then forget again in August. Maybe with all the new faces, maybe they'll learn those lessons this time and just play that straight game and not get fancy, not get cute, and bring all facets to the game.
That's just what I get nervous about. Walt Flanagan actually brings this up quite a bit, where the Penguins get full of themselves, he thinks. And when everything's going their way, when they have a full complement of talent on the ice, that's when they start to lapse into those bad habits. I think he traces that back to the Dan Bilesma years. And I think he's got a good point in some cases. And I think I've thought that independently myself over the years too. So that's my concern, and it'll be tested here in game 2 of this 3-game set coming up tomorrow night at PPG Paints Arena. Another evening game on Thursday night, and then an afternoon game on Saturday. And then the Penguins play the Rangers on Sunday on Hockey Day in America. So it's going to be busy. So if you talk about adrenaline, Dan, they're going to need a good bit of it to get through this stretch. At least they don't have to travel. So you have that. Thanks for joining me. This has been a good time. And we had some viewers, so that's why I kept it going for a while past the half-hour mark. That's usually the line of demarcation. We'll see if we can push it a little bit more. But
yeah, I've got to finish writing here.
Yeah, I don't want to take you away from all that. But thanks to those of you who watched and who chimed in on the live chat here on YouTube. Hey, let's do this again on Friday. I've had fun.
All right. Thank you, Matty.
All right. Thanks to all of you. We'll talk to you next time. And remember, check out PittsburghHockeyNow.com. PHN Plus subscriptions are available and selling quickly. So grab one of those for some of the premium content, both before and after every Penguins game. Bye-bye.